Today, I wanted to talk about being a first generation American and chasing after your dreams, and more specifically, my experience with going on the study abroad program called Semester at Sea. And I was able to have the opportunity of a lifetime to go on Semester at Sea back in spring 2014. And I can't even believe saying that now. That was uh, that was more than 10 years ago for sure. Um, right now is spring of 2026. And when I got to embark on that journey, I I had just turned 21 years old. Like I actually turned 21. Um, I think it was the day that we were embarking on that journey. And this specific moment was very pivotal in my life. And if you landed on this video, you might be searching for information about Semester at Sea and how I was able to afford it. And back then, I believe the tuition was around $24,000. That's just the tuition to get the credits on board and then to have room and board. And then pocket money to travel around the world, like eating at restaurants or riding the buses, transportation, is also a different set of budget. And I will tell you, it was one of the hardest things that I had to do in my life, which was saving up for semester at sea. But I knew that I had to go. I was first generation American, so my parents couldn't help me finance this. And I was also a waitress in Chicago. I worked on one of the boats in Navy Pier. And another thing, I'm pretty sure I had a third, no, yeah, like a third job. I was writing for the newspaper there. And I was probably working in one of the offices, like the student services. So I was just doing a lot of things. And most of the way that I earned money was that I was a waitress and I would take one shift, double shifts, on top of taking 5 credit courses. And I was just so determined. I would tell customers I was going to go study abroad. I was telling my coworkers. I was also paying for an apartment at this time with my former best friends in college, which going to study abroad and choosing that selfish route actually broke off our friendship. I had to decide for myself that I was going to go study abroad and choose what was best for me and my dreams, which was going to go and travel the world and leaving behind this apartment. But if I could make that happen back then by myself, well, also with the help of student loans, and you're watching this video, I'm sure that you can make it happen too, somehow, some way, even with how the world is today. Oh, I'm pretty sure I received scholarships back then. I was frequently emailing Semester at Sea and their financial aid office. I was not able to get a job on the board on the ship, which I was really sad about. I remember it was able to shave off like $3,000 or $4,000, but I was still able to make it. And I would say that it was the hardest time of my life because I actually didn't know that it was for reals that I was going until I boarded that ship. I was so scared because something always came up. There was always a bill. There was also another vaccination to take or a passport visa. It just cost so much, which back then it was an impossible task, but now I'm like, wait, that was really worth it because we were going to like Vietnam, India. I think that I needed visa for Ghana as well. But there were countries we were going to, and we had to prepare for the vaccinations as well as the visas. which back then I wish I had the patience to look for a cheaper way to get vaccinations, but I paid for it out of pocket. Back then, I was also super hyper independent. I didn't have much help from family. My sisters were way too busy. Pretty sure they were raising their kids at that time. And yeah, and the way that it changed my life as a first generation American was that I got to go on board with other first generation students who made it happen for themselves. We were surrounded by really affluent people, like students coming from really, really rich families, and imagining, seeing, and experiencing how they see the world. It really changed. I was like, wait, we deserve that too. Like immigrants deserve that too. And being surrounded, I had my small little group of like first generation Americans who made this trip happen somehow, some way. We realized how smart we were to make this happen, to make this impossible thing happen. And then we realized what we deserve and what we work hard towards. And I think that made the biggest change for me. I was like, wait, I don't have to suffer all my life. I could get a really good job someday, but I don't have to climb the ladder all my life. It wasn't, I think it broke something in a good way, such as just hustling and grinding. Like, I'm good with hustling and grinding. Semester C showed me that if I hustled and grinded in a smart way, then I could keep traveling the world because it actually wasn't as expensive as I thought it was. And yes, going to Japan, it was as expensive as traveling around the United States. But back then, I learned that not that my money would go far. Yes, like US dollars go far, but I realized that I could get a higher quality life in a very livable way when I traveled to places like, of course, Vietnam. One of the places that I can't even go back to now that was one of my favorites was Myanmar. It was Burma. And that's when Aung San Suu Kyi was still, I believe she was imprisoned in her house, but this was the time that Obama was also president. So there was a lot of commotion going on with her being released and Desmond Tutu speaking up for her and Barack Obama speaking up for her. The day we landed in Myanmar, there was just so much conflict going on, and we didn't know if we should go down. And I remember a lot of the parents of the students who were watching the news and like keeping up with the news and telling their children not to go down or go explore. But it was so untouched back then, and people were so pure, and I'm sure they still are today. And I think about that country often. Yeah. Just talking about it, my memories go back to it. But the way that semester at sea changed my life, I don't think I would be the person I am today. I was not as free-spirited. I know that when I went to college, I was on full survival mode. So when I came back from semester at sea, I actually ended up going back. I actually, pretty sure. So that last year, I still had my senior year. I finished up my senior year. And then I was panicking because I graduated with publishing and like creative writing and English. And my mom was the Asian mom that she was. She was hounding on me about like, let me show you. She kept asking me, like, how are you going to make money? You study the arts, and now you're finished, and you have no plans. Which, actually, looking back, that could have been the best thing for me. Looking back, I would go back to that younger self of me. I would have encouraged her to go move across the country or something to make her dreams happen. But, of course, I was also in a relationship back then. It was an almost 3-year relationship at that time, which I'll talk about in this video. But I went back home, experienced the travel blues, depression, study abroad depression, which I didn't know what that was. I had to shrink back to my former self, which I had, of course, outgrown. And I applied. A friend of mine referred me to a corporate job with Discovery Channel, and I thought because it was a huge corporation with publishing that I had won the lottery. I thought it was so aligned. I was like, wait, I get to read books all day. I get to read textbooks and edit and talk about the world and help students learn. It was really great on paper. It was a really wonderful idea. It was right in downtown Chicago in this high-rise building. I thought it was perfect for me, and maybe it was at that time. But that was one of the things. It was perfect on paper, but the kind of lifestyle that it turned out to be was leaving. I was living with my cousin in her apartment. So it was going from the apartment, commuting, being inside all day for 8 hours a day, staring at a computer, editing. And my colleagues, the ones I was like directly working with, it was a diverse group of people, and they were like amazing. But I remember in between lunch, you're just surrounded by people who were living the same life, working towards, that paycheck, thinking we had a purpose. And I just, in my heart, I knew there was more. Man, what a precious time in my life. It took me a few months to be honest with myself and say, this is not it. I tried to apply for graduate programs. It was just a few months where I was like, I need to go back to school. I need to go back to school. And I attended I got into a grad program in Chicago, and I would take night classes in secret. I didn't want to tell the people at work because I was like, I don't want them to know I'm tired. And that sparked the fire in me again. I was taking a grad program for education. But eventually there was it was not study abroad, but it was a grad program surrounded by people who'd studied abroad. And it was in a place in Vermont where the Peace Corps began. And it was a school called SIT Graduate Institute in Vermont. And that, I was like, moving across the country? That makes so much sense. Like it just felt aligned. But I remember the topic of how semester C changed my life. So I'm narrating to you the story of how it changed my life, because now it went on to like finding a job, being qualified for the job, and then eventually like going to grad school. And long story short, I went to grad school. Then right after grad school, I went to Costa Rica to teach for a year. And then my mom got sick and I had to come back. Right? And yeah. Talking about it out loud, it sounds like what happened on semester at C, and I had to come back and go back to an environment which I had obviously outgrown. But semester at C, for me, continues to be my North Star. I am now 33 years old. I went on semester at C at 21 years old, but that free-spirited doesn't mean you're any less intelligent. But I went from a first-generation Filipino American learning how to navigate the college system and really like excelling at it. And then I learned how to navigate the world as a first-generation American. And if you're watching this and you're a first-generation, I would recommend semester C because you're surrounded by peers who are very like-minded. And I know that some people will go study abroad, but from just like what I've witnessed from friends who've gone to study abroad, semester at sea requires you to be in a different country every week, learn about a different country every week. And study abroad, yes, there's a good enough time to be in a certain country for 3 to 4 months, just one country. But let's be honest here. Being with culture shock, you could hold on to that phone and be on the phone the whole time. Semester at sea has so much energy. Like, yes, I knew one person out of the 500 people that were on that boat that was just glued and stuck to her phone the whole time. But what I did was I left my phone behind and I talked to people as much as I could, which I know you could do on on a study abroad program, but everybody around the world is glued on their phones. Imagine being surrounded by 500 people and then your small group of friends, knowing you have to live the urgent life and knowing that you have to make the most out of the next 3 to 4 months. You're all in a portal of good and beautiful urgency, and it's just not the same as a study abroad program that requires you to stay for 3 to 4 months. I would say I paid off my semester at sea debt now, the student loans, but I was so good with budgeting on semester at sea that I think I went with like $3,000 to $4,000. I think it was just $3,000 for like my pocket money, and I still had money left over to backpack Europe after that for 6 countries. My ex-boyfriend flew out, and I ended up paying for some of his stuff because he didn't have any money, but I still had money left over before going home. And I can look back at that moment where it just like taught me so much. I still text my semester at sea friends, and it continues, that version of me continues to be a North Star for me, because I made something that was impossible happen. It was something that not a lot of first generation study abroad or first generation Americans get to do, but it was such a beautiful experience for me. And now, what is it, 11, 12 years later, I would still say every penny that I spent on semester at sea and every shift that was, poured towards that dream was so worth it. The 4 months I was on semester at sea was the best semester of my 4-year university experience. It led me to so many things. I discovered myself in a way that led me to searching for those kinds of people, which is like people who move around the world, people who are curious about world events. Not in a way that's selfish. Like, yes, you'll find students on board that are selfish and come from really wealthy families, but I've also met the most compassionate people who were curious about the world. And yeah, most of all, like, yes, I discovered the world, but within myself, there was something that was healing. I had lived all my life in like survival mode, and so did the 2 generations of women before me. My mom worked so hard. My grandma worked so hard relentlessly to put food on the table. And I think for me, that experience taught me I can work really hard, but there are ways to be creative, and I could still travel the world. And my mom was cheering me on that whole time. She was like, hell yeah, I would call her all the time before every single country and update her. Those are very fond memories. And yeah, if you have any questions about semester at sea or studying abroad on your own, I am very open to questions. Semester at sea, as you can see, this video is almost 20 minutes. So if you have any questions about semester at sea, changing your life as a first generation American, how you could make it happen. I'm happy to help you brainstorm. And thank you for watching. Here's to making our dreams happen.